Harry, Nair, welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. Thank you so much for taking part in this interview today. I'm very happy to have you here. For those who are unfamiliar with your work, could you tell us what you do?
Namaste, Venus. Thank you very much for having me today. Yes, Venus, happy to do that. I have essentially on a journey to bring the ancient knowledge of well-being that sits in the Indian tradition across many aspects to the contemporary world, and to bring it to the service of one particular proposition, which is that uh, the 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 Western world and the sort of the developed world in general has many people who now face a peculiar problem. They
Uh,
have everything that they could typically want. There's great amounts of material prosperity, professional success, and they find themselves at a place where they find a lack, something missing. And they don't quite know. So they have different words and phrases and ideas to express that. Sometimes saying, I'm not contented, I'm not, quite there, I'm not satisfied, I'm out of sorts, etc., etc. And what I've come to the conclusion is that they don't have the secret of what in the Indian tradition is known as joy, which is very different from the Western idea of joy, I think. And so we are bringing the proposition of joy, or particularly playful joy, expressed by the Sanskrit word Leela, to the people across the world. And the purpose of bringing that is that then completes your life, and you don't feel a lack. And more importantly, it then does a whole lot of other good that transforms many other aspects of your life. So the pursuit of joy, bringing joy into your life through the wisdom of ancient India is really what I'm trying to do now.
so I'm intrigued. So, what is the difference between your definition of joy and what I would understand as joy? What's the difference?
That's an interesting question. I've been trying to, so I think that, I've been sort of talking to a lot of people trying to understand the Western definition of joy. And what I've realized is that I think in the United States, for example, I think the idea of joy is related to a kind of set of emotions.
Uh-huh.
So you feel good, you feel joyful, and then there's an exuberance, there's an idea of excitement. All of those kind of things are associated with joy. Joy being closely associated with emotion.
Okay.
In the Indian tradition, joy is a state.
Okay. Mhm.
Emotions are transient. So happiness, for example, which is a product of emotion, is transient. So you are happy at some point, you're unhappy at another point, and it keeps changing. Uh, Joy, on the other hand, in the Indian tradition, is a state you're in, independent of the emotions, independent of the situation you find yourself in, etc., etc. So, so joy is the way it's defined in the Indian tradition is that it's that thing that makes you engage with life, intensely engage with life, irrespective of the context and circumstance that you find yourself in.
That's perfect. So it's like a real inner peace, sense of inner peace, I guess.
It's inner peace, it's an
Mhm.
inner peace with a sense of anticipation.
Okay, I like it. Anticipation of something good happening, I suppose.
Yeah, something is
Uh,
going to happen. Now, well, it's
uh,
not necessarily about the good or the bad, it's
mm,
really about the something, the
mhm.
my intention to engage intensely with what life has to offer. It actually, I think, arises out of the deeper sort of understanding that the great miracle that we are experiencing at the moment is life itself.
Mhm.
And therefore, engaging with life is what it's all about. And it does not matter whether, what exactly we believe life is bringing to us at this moment, whether it is happiness or sorrow or, whatever, right? So, and one of the ways in which that can be judged is the attitude with which you wake up, for example.
Hmm. Okay.
And it's often the case that we wake up and then the back of our mind we know today is going to be a good day for whatever reasons that we're aware of, or that it's going to be a difficult day. And very often when it's a difficult day, some of us would have noticed that we kind of shrink a little bit. We don't really want to face that day, right? I wish it was over and I got on to another better day. Joy, on the other hand, is a state that allows you to engage with all kinds of days with the same degree of intensity. And I think that is the underlying idea of joy that there is in the Indian tradition. And Leela, particularly, is an even more interesting idea. It's a subtler twist on that idea, which is saying you approach that whole thing, but to the degree of playfulness. You see life not as this, incredible weight on your shoulder, but something a whole lot, lighter. And so you enter it with anticipation, you engage with it intensely, but a little lightly. Yeah, so that's the difference.
So you've created a platform called Leela Life. Could you tell us more about that? What inspired you to create this platform and what we can find there and how long it's been around for?
So it's very new. In fact, we haven't even really formally launched it. So you're one of the
Okay.
early people to have a sneak peek
Hmm.
at it, and so that's where we're at. We've been working on it for quite some time. I've been working on this. Well, I've been working on the idea of this idea that I just described to you for over a decade now, and it came out of my professional background and my watching people struggle with this difficulty of having everything but not having that last bit. But the actual translation of that to the platform, we started working on it a couple of years, about 2.5 years ago. And I've got a team that's across the world now, and different competencies. There are technology people, there are communications people, and all kinds of people. And what it does is it does two things. One, so essentially, it's a platform that allows you to access all of the wisdom that's available for you to bring joy into your life from the Indic tradition, what I call the
Okay.
Indic tradition. Indic tradition really refers to ancient Indian tradition, right? So it's a platform, it's one place where you can find it. So what can you find there? So you can find two broad sets of things there. One, you can find courses and products that you can buy. So you can actually learn from specialists back in India, or you can get unique products that are relevant for bringing into your life to bring a sense of this kind of joy that I'm referring to. So one is a set of offerings that you have available that you can access, right? Uh, some of them are courses which you can learn, or some of them are products that you can access, you can buy. The second aspect of the platform is a set of tools that help you figure out what is it that you should buy or what is it
Oh,
that you should
cool.
integrate into your life,
That should be
right? Because
interesting.
that's often the question. Because I've opened up this entire can of all of this goodies from the world from the Indic knowledge, but that cannot be overwhelming, right? And so how do I find what I really need? So that's a set of tools. So that set of tools primarily sort of enables you to do two or three things. One, it enables you to discover the essential nature that you have. A. Every human being in the Indic tradition is supposed to have a unique and essential nature. So there's a tool that enables you to find what kind of a person, what is my essential nature. The second is a tool that enables you to figure out how aligned my life today is to my essential nature. So you get my point? So the second one is my life aligned to who I am, or is my life out of whack? Is the daily life that I do not aligned to the kind of person I am? And the third tool is, okay, if it's misaligned, what kind of capacities can I build so that I can solve for this misalignment? So those are the tools. So you have three tools. You can do them in sequence. You can do them just one at a time, and then see how that's playing out for you, etc., etc. But all of them to help you figure out what you need to, what courses you could potentially, learn, and what products you could potentially use in your life to
Is it
That's
like
the
a
plan.
quiz that's free that you can do so you can discover more about yourself?
On the second part, you're talking about the tools.
Yeah.
No, the tools are a little bit more elaborate than that. So it's not as simple as it's thing. So you actually go through. So all the courses, for example, are all one-to-one courses that you actually do with specialists back in India. These
Hmm.
are highly curated, specialists who have significant lineage in that, right? So you actually do one-to-one classes with them. Similarly, when you do these tools, there we have guides. So you do a one-to-one with them, and they help you. So there is some question answers of the quiz variety that you do, but you also have one or two conversations that you with people. And so that all of that adds up to you getting a very deep understanding of yourself.
Hmm.
Quizzes tend to be a bit, unidimensional. So they're
Impersonal.
not really able to find the real you. They're kind of simplistic. They're useful tools to start on a journey, but they're really not that useful to get to the get to the essence of things and then to be able to decide what you should really have in your life. So it's a little bit more than that. So you will fill up you will do some quizzes, but you will also meet a guide and then go through that process. So and there is the initial part of that is a free 15-minute consultation, and then post that, depending on how you want to proceed, then there are price points for the various tools.
Okay, so it's actually a range of one-on-one courses with experts. It's not like a course that you download and do on your own time. You're guided by a human. Is that correct?
Correct, correct.
Uh,
You fix a time on the platform, and there's an actual person who's had 40 years, possibly the seventh generation in that particular thing, back in India, and then you fix a time, and then you actually have a consultation of this kind. Actually, not just consultation, but actually learning. So you can actually learn. For example, you can learn something to do with art.
mm,
You could have something to do with, let's say, a course that combines martial arts with yoga. I'm just giving you different types
mm,
of courses that you can have. So yeah, so there's a whole range of those courses that you do, and you do them one to one. The person sees you do stuff,
mm.
uh, corrects you as you go along. It's a very personalized, individualized, rather high touch kind of thing.
Okay, so do you actually pay for individual courses or you get a subscription? Is it an individual course that you would pay for?
You would pay for individual courses. So what we do is we help you build a program.
Hmm.
So the first conversation that you do will start to direct you towards building a program. A program typically means a combination of two courses, or maybe sometimes three, and some products, right? And so the products you can of course buy at your convenience, and you can even go to multiple places. We just give you the advice, and then we send you off to different places to be able to access the products. The courses are on our platform, so you actually have a package of 2 or 3 courses, and typically all of the programs are for 3 months, out of which the courses are for 2 months.
Hmm.
So 8 weeks or 4 weeks courses, and you pay for each of those courses separately. But there's a total. So therefore, at the beginning of the program, you will know what is the total cost you will incur for the total program, because you know which courses you're going to do, what's the cost of that, and so there's a total cost that you can arrive at.
And could you tell us what the courses are? The
Oh,
categories?
yeah. So there are there are 5 broad categories in which in the whole framework of Indic well-being. Okay,
Hmm.
and you will find courses inside all of them. So the first one is eat right, because we believe
Hmm.
that everything starts with eating right, right?
Hmm.
And so you will find that, and you will find courses that teach you different aspects of eating right, and the skills that you need to have, and all kinds of things relating to that. So you find a bunch of very interesting courses on the platform. Second is think calm,
Hmm.
right? So again, there are a bunch of areas, from the more obvious areas like meditation and Raja Yoga, to a bunch of other areas that are all designed to help you, arrive at a place of thinking calm. Again, you will find courses of various kinds under that category. So if you go to the site and you look up Think Calm, you will find a whole bunch of courses that you could do. And, and the third is rejoice in art. So we
Uh-huh.
believe that art is a critical component of, not just we believe, but actually Indian tradition strongly propagates the idea that art has to be a critical component of building up a human being's ability to find well-being and joy. And so art is a significant component in the way we think about the framework. So again, art has its own space in the website. So you will actually go there and say rejoice in art, and it will actually give you courses, and it will actually give you both insight courses as well as practices that you can learn. So if you go into that, so that's the third one, rejoice in art. The fourth one is live on land.
Uh-huh. That was
Essentially,
curious, that
bring
one.
nature,
Uh-huh.
yeah, bring nature into your life, right? Whether it's the sun, whether it's the soil, whether it's animals, but bring nature into your life, and there again you will learn fascinating, things. Again, insights courses and practice courses for you to be able to figure out how to bring nature into your life, especially for those of us who live in cities. And it's a challenge at all times to be able to sort of bring nature into our life. So this is these. So there's a set of courses that help you think about that, understand that, and products and services and stuff that will help you. So again, you should take a look at the website. You'll get a good sense of what's possible. So that's the fourth. And the fifth one is a sort of an omnibus thing called Smile.
That's
And
very
inside
curious.
Smile, you'll actually, yes, and inside Smile, you'll actually find three small subcategories. First is personal care and fitness. So essentially, looking good
Mhm.
is one part of Smile. The second part of Smile is intimacy,
Uh-huh.
and ensuring that you get your life of intimacy in place. And the third is spirituality. And so these three dimensions are sort of bundled into the idea called Smile. So these are the five broad areas within which you will find practices, you will find insights courses, practices courses, and products on the website.
Amazing. So are there any plans for in-person retreats in India?
Yes, I think one of the things we're going to do is as we build this out, we're clearly going to, so we're going to have in-person. So the first set of things that we're going to do is to actually bring some of our courses and some of our people to the US, so that it's easy for people to access, right, initially. But we will also have retreats and other sort of physical events that you can participate in back in India as well. Remember one thing though, that we are essentially all about helping you integrate these things into your lifestyle, your daily life. So we are not interested in giving you something and then disappearing from the scene, because I think that's one of the difficulties in people being able to do this transformation, is that they find something, they do it, the person who's given it to them is no more there, right? It's over. And so they this kind of struggle with. So we are going to be with the person for a long time, and you can then have us available to sort of to help you navigate this as you go along, instead of just having these individuals. So what we do is, so we look at programs in, as I said, in blocks of 3 months. And so we will be available throughout with you. So, for example, in a particular 3 month period, you found a certain set of objectives, you set out with a certain set of objectives, and you feel that I've reached, let's say, 70%, and then you want to go to the next thing. So we can then together craft which direction that the next 3 months should go. And it need not necessarily be that you have to do a full program in the next 3 months. It might be, okay, you know what, I think this is the area that I want to focus on for another 3 months, and so on and so forth. So essentially, our approach here is, we are not the seller of courses. We are not the aggregator of courses. We are the sort of, what we call the enlightened and empathetic friend who's
Uh-huh.
with you in the journey of helping you transform. So we're going to be with you.
So it's like a guidance, a guided
That's
process.
right. It's going to,
Mm,
yeah, and guided, and we're going to be with you. So, so it's not that we'll, teach you three things and then we'll disappear from the scene. But,
mm,
we will help you, and we will be aware of what's going on, with you. So we're not going to leave you just with the three specialists. Leela Life is going to have that continuity of, knowing what you've gone through and what is that you got out of it, and helping you navigate as you keep going forward. So we are about actually helping you transform, making that happen.
that's really important. Yeah, application. And I've really been attracted to a lot of Indian culture throughout my life. I love yoga. I love kirtan. I love the mantras. I'm a vegan, so I love Indian food as well. And I also am interested in sacred sexuality, but I think there's a lot of like Indian cultured things that have been packaged for the West in a way that might not be authentic. And I have a lot of Indian friends who tell me this as well. So I found it's really interesting how you packaged these ideas. It seemed very unique. Were you aware of this about, different Indian traditions coming to the West and how they've been very visible and maybe losing authenticity from what the true message
Well,
is?
yes, I mean, obviously, I've been very interested in it, in this whole thing, and I had a life as a management consultant,
Mm,
for a long time, and so traveled across the world, did work. So was also able to participate in some ways in the Western sort of way of Indian tradition, see it up close.
yeah.
So, for example, whether it's Tantra in Berlin or yoga in the US or whatever, right? So I've seen some of that. So I do have some sense of where it's got to, some reasonably good sense, I would say, of where it's got to. But having said that, I come from a family that's fairly rooted in tradition here in India, and 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 of course my own personal journey has been very much rooted in tradition as well. So I do understand. I think the gap, uh, you
Mm,
know. I find that interesting. I find the presence of that gap an interesting problem to solve, and I think it arises out of a good reason,
mhm,
which is that uh, Indian tradition is often so Indian tradition has two components, and this is something that I've spent a lot of time before I got to this understanding, which is that when you pick something from the Indian tradition, uh, you pick knowledge,
mhm,
and then you pick culture,
mhm,
and that they're actually different things. And it's just that the packaging of many of those things is so interwoven that most people are unable to distinguish between the essential knowledge that is there in what is being communicated and what's a cultural context that's evolved over time in the land called India, right? So they're two different things. So the intention here is to really go to the essence of the knowledge,
mhm,
not necessarily to transmit culture as it exists or existed in the Indian context to other parts of the world. Because we start from this point, and actually the Indian knowledge system actually starts from a very profound place of respect. It starts from a place of respecting all other contexts and all other cultures, and then says that here is this knowledge, and you now need to figure out how to use this knowledge in your context. This is the sort of cardinal sort of way in which Indian knowledge has always historically uh, approached the problem of dissemination of knowledge. So what that means is that, for example, let's take food, for example, right? The underlying principles and the knowledge relating to food is what we are taking to the world, not the food that you got to eat.
mhm,
Because and I live in India, and I can tell you, if you go to the northern part of India and if you come to the southern end where I am staying now, the food is actually very different. It all
uh,
comes from the same common knowledge pool, but the food is extremely different. But the underlying principles are absolutely the same. And therefore, the principles and the knowledge is what we are taking to the world. So the reason I'm saying all of this is because I think the authenticity comes when you're able to extract that pure knowledge and enable people to find how that knowledge can be applied in their context. The lack of authenticity comes when you take the cultural constructs and then they get mixed because a cultural construct from one completely different culture cannot survive in that way in another culture. By definition, it's not possible, right? Your climate is different, your context is different, your thinking is so many things are different. And so I think the existence of that gap partly is because culture was also part of the dissemination. And in our Leela life approach, we are trying to be as close to the dissemination of essential knowledge as possible, the principles, more than the sort of cultural aspects. And so that's one of the ways in which we think that we can add a lot of authenticity to what we are giving without making it difficult for people of different cultures to access and to use it.
Yeah, I found that the platform seemed very accessible for people who might not be into, let's say, spirituality or all the other things that Indian culture is known for. I found it's more saying lifestyle, and everyone wants to improve their lifestyle. And then it seems like it's presented in a very different way from what you would expect an Indian lifestyle platform to be. The things like joy and
Yeah.
smile and what to eat. That's because these are things that affect all lives, no matter what your disciplines you are following. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, and it's not. One part of it is that it's obviously designed to help people find it accessible. I think that's definitely one part of it. But I must tell you, there's a deeper point, which is that actually, if you go deep into Indian knowledge and try to distill it down, you will find it's actually pretty simple but profound approach to the day to day.
Mm.
It's not just there's very esoteric stuff in the Indian tradition. I'm not saying it's
Yeah.
not there. It is there. But remember that esoteric stuff in the Indian tradition is one part of the Indian tradition. But there's a large part, maybe a vast majority, which is actually about living the day to day. Let me give you a sense of this, right? So, for example, as I went into this in a lot of depth, I realized that the Indian tradition actually looks at human beings as four types.
Mm.
And then says, you pick the one out of this that is you and go for it. Okay. Incidentally, this is not ever mentioned, but it's actually a deep assumption in all the texts and all the practices and everything. The four types are: one, the ascetic or the monk, right? A lot of the yogic tradition actually is relevant for the ascetic or the monk.
Mm-hmm.
The second type of person is the warrior, the king, the person who's out there, fighting the world, all of that physical strength and, all of that, the warrior. The third is the householder, the person who, and that's a technical term in Sanskrit, we call it grihastha, the person who's engaging, in the day-to-day of life, who's running who's got a family, who's just trying to be a good person and who's just trying to lead a good life. And the fourth is the lover, the person who's and you can be all of this at different points in time, but your entire life can be seen through the prism of what's that dominant state that you see yourself in at this point. And therefore you look at that. So a lot of the esoteric things that we refer to come from traditions that are designed actually for the first, the ascetic or the monk. But because it's so esoteric, there's a certain
Resistance.
gravity for it, and everybody's very much interested in it. And so Indian tradition tends to get a rather sort of people have the sense that it is by definition esoteric. It's not. It's actually very profound and deep rooted in the daily life as well. So so the website goes into all of these things because they also are a good reflection and an accurate reflection of the underlying and the deep Indian knowledge.
Fantastic. Could you give 3 tips to our listeners about how to live a more Indic life?
Yeah, I think the first is don't obsess about it.
Okay.
It cuts across in all our texts that at the end of it, the sense that you have to be, a little playful with life,
Mhm.
and let life be and let you be,
Uh,
is a kind of an idea. And I'm obviously paraphrasing from various places, but this idea that you have to be liked
uh,
is a big idea in the Indian tradition, right? That's one. That to me is a very cardinal idea. The second is that your well-being is always holistic.
I have
It's
to
a
go.
balance of the multiple. It's
Mm,
never, take this thing and, crash all barriers and go far with it. Need not be the way to have, well, a rounded, holistic balance of the multiple is really the best way to find your well-being. So that's another very deep idea that pervades in all things in tradition. So look for your balance of the multiple. For you, art might be very interesting. For you, the sense of beauty might be very interesting. For somebody else, spirituality might be very interesting. For a third person, fitness might be interesting. And so you find all these various things that work for you and put them together and experiment with them and find the balance that works for you in all of that. So that is the balance. And the last point is, it's you are unique and your sense of well-being is unique, and therefore everything has to be individualized. There is no singular way of achieving well-being. And so it is all individualized. So find your path. So what we talked about, the fact that it's a multiplicity. Now we are saying it's your multiplicity. So first is be liked, find the play in the joy.
mhm.
Second is find your balance in the multiple. The third is find your path. And so if you focus on these three things, Indic tradition says you will find that one day that you are more joyful and you're always in joy than otherwise. So it's never the outcome. It's journey, and you will find the journey change character as you go forward to get you joy.
It sounds great. So, how far are you from actually launching now? Is it launched already or
So we've not formally launched it, but we've got lots of friends now, sort of, and
testing?
friends of friends and so on. You know
Mm,
how these things are.
mhm.
So we put it out there honestly, and we just talked to a bunch of friends, and then it's taken a life of its own. But we're still very below the radar. It's small interactions that we're doing just about now, and this is one of the early interactions that I'm having where we're talking about this. So I think we expect to launch in a few months' time very formally in a big way. But honestly, that looks more and more like a formality because I think just as people is finding it and and participating. Yeah, so that's where we find ourselves now.
And have you been testing the courses yourself?
But yes, I mean, we tested between me, my co-founder, and a bunch of other people. We kind of test almost everything.
Mhm.
So the curation is a pretty pretty big process for us because we now have about 100 and odd specialists on our platform and
Wow.
a similar number of products, and that's come down from our original list of 2,500 specialists. So we
Wow.
we went from 2,500 specialists to 140 odd specialists. We might take a few more, but it's a fairly aggressive curation because we believe that we really want to have the
Quality.
right people
Mm.
on the quality of the kind that we are we're very that we believe reflects the depth of what we have understood is the Indic knowledge. We want to make sure that that's the right thing that we provide.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea because otherwise, for a user, it'd be very confusing if you've got 2,500 specialists.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and numbers have no meaning in this, right? It's really
Mm,
about the power of the right person, and the right
mhm,
person can transform your life. You can do 20 courses, but nothing happens. But that
mhm.
I mean, we've had instances where people have done two sessions and then just said, it's just made all the difference in our lives already. They've gone on and done the rest of it. So So yeah, so I'm satisfied at this point. Excited, I think, because I think a lot of people coming back to us with a lot of ideas and like the retreats thing that you
Mm.
mentioned and many other things we are talking about. We are considering, what I call sort of small communities that we can build, physical communities that we can build near the big cities in America, for example. So let's say upstate New York, where we have a small place where people could plug in when they have the time. Maybe they could, it's all still being thought through as we speak. But yeah, so maybe all our specialists, sort of spend a month in a year in that place, and so all the people in New York could, potentially, have access to that and so on and so forth. So yeah, so very exciting.
Amazing. A couple of quick questions for you that I ask everyone on my podcast. What is the book that changed your life?
I would say the Upanishads.
Which one, sorry?
We have in the Indic tradition, there's something called the Upanishads. The Upanishads are a series of books called Vedanta. Vedanta is what it's called, and so there are a series of books, and they essentially codify the knowledge, right? And it's and the summary of that is can be found in another book called the Bhagavad Gita. I don't know whether you've heard of the Gita, but Bhagavad Gita is actually quite it's a summary book, and a lot of people refer to that. But for me, the books that made a big impact were the Upanishads in total. I spent, I think, two sort of, I spent a few years in the early part reading the Upanishads, and actually didn't get a word of. I didn't understand anything. Okay. Then I had to come back many years later, and I spent 3-4 years reading it, and it changed my life. So it's not the classic answer to the question of which is a book that changed your life, but it's actually the text that changed my life. It's profound. It's incredible, and it's the codification of deep knowledge, scientific knowledge. I must tell you this. One of the little books on that, it's a 16-page booklet, is one of the Upanishads, is actually about the it's about conception of a human being. How does a human being get born? Remember, this was done 3,000 years ago.
Wow.
So from that to extreme spirituality to everything is combined in one corpus of text called Upanishads. Extraordinary stuff.
How do we spell
Changed my
that?
life in many ways.
How can I spell
Upanishads. UPA.
UP
UPA.
UPA?
NI. UPA.
N
NI.
uh-huh.
NISHA.
Uh-huh. Upanishad.
DS. Upanishads. D for Delhi. D for
Uh-huh.
Denver. Upanishads.
Okay, and exciting. So I'm going to look that up. I'm a big reader, as you can see. I always ask my guests
Yes.
about the book that changed their lives because reading can just be so powerful.
Yeah, indeed.
And
And Upanishads you will enjoy. I'm absolutely certain. So,
perfect. So which phrase or affirmation do you live by? Is there a quote that you live by?
uh, there is one. It's a little. So this is actually said by a guru, a very ancient guru. When you went to ask him a question, you went to ask him any question, he would answer with a question, and that
Okay.
question was always the same. The
Which
question
is
he would ask you is, who is asking this question? And I'll tell you what that means. It's actually the central proposition in the Upanishads. Uh, Upanishad says that this this is not you.
uh-huh.
And how do we know that this is not you? Because there is somebody inside who's able to see this you, right?
Yeah.
There's somebody who's observing, saying, "Oh, I'm happy today. I'm sad today, and something." There's somebody inside us observing ourselves, right? You would have experienced that in your own life, right? So there's
Absolutely.
somebody inside, and that somebody who's inside is the immutable I, is the person who will remain once this is gone, and so on. And so that's the I. So through that question, he would pass on the wisdom of the Upanishads by whenever you went to the Tao, he would ask you, who's asking that question? And then you would say, it's I that's asking that question. How do you know it's the I that's asking that? I mean, which I? That's and takes you back to that this thing. So it's a little question, but it's a very profound way of seeing the world. Who's asking the question, which is really helping you sort of reduce, detach the essential I from this, and so I find that a very interesting sort of phrase that keeps coming back to me when I'm out there, still saying, in dealing with life on a day-to-day basis, is to take me back to the Upanishads by asking that question: who's asking?
So what would be the answer to that? It sounds like a bit of a riddle. Like, for example, are you
No,
asking?
the answer is the essential you, which is so typically people find it very so. So this concept of saying uh, there's somebody other than this
Mm,
who's the I is not. I mean, now we find it relatively easy to understand that, right? So I wake
yeah.
up in the morning, I observe myself. So there's somebody else who's observing me, and that somebody else is the true me, is the
Mm,
sum and substance of what Upanishads talks about. What it also then goes on to say is that that's immutable, that doesn't die, and you can use words like soul and so on and so forth, but essentially says that that's the immutable thing, and therefore everything that happens to you is simply a function of your senses working with the mind and so on and so forth. So don't get too hassled by it, don't get too attached by it, because there's another you which is observing all of this where nothing happens to that you, and that you remains forever. Uh, that's a spiritual sort of lesson, and it's a spiritual direction, and deep yogic practice, for example, starts to give you some sense of that, some perception of that difference between this you, I, and that this thing. So the question is not a riddle; it's simply a way of reminding you that the true you is actually not the one that's getting enormously anxious about the fact that the train is going to be 10 minutes late or whatever. So.
okay. Okay. So where can people find you?
I visit the US. I'm based in India, so I'm available, online to talk and to discuss and keep having these conversations. But I also visit the US every quarter,
Mhm.
so I'm available typically in New York City every once about 2 to 3 weeks every quarter. So I'm happy to meet people when I'm there, but I'm available online. My email ID is hari at leelalife, hari@leelalife.com. And I'm happy to take emails, respond to them, and of course, I'm available on all, LinkedIn and what have you, all the social media.
And would you like to share the
Yeah,
website, Leela Life, Leela?
yes, yeah. We are the website is leelalife.com, Leela, Leela, life, life.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. It's been a pleasure, and we'll be applying these lessons to our lives. Lots of joy.
Thank you very much, Venus.
Thank you.